My conversation today on Behind the Act is with Josh Bonanno. He's a mix engineer and overall creative in Nashville, Tennessee. And today we're talking about perfectionism and how it can stifle output, as well as exploring what our motivations are to post on social media and asking how do you find life balance and give yourself grace at the same time when you fall short of it. I'm Seth Schaefer. This is Behind the Act with Josh Bonanno.
I'm always like, oh yeah, I mix records, which maybe it's just like an insecurity of my own, but like nobody knows what that is. No, like even people in the music industry, I feel like are like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like I don't know, like depending who you say that to, I'm always like, they have no clue what I'm saying. Like my in-laws were just here, and they were just like, just explain again what you do, and they were like sitting in the studio, and they were like, what, like, and I was like, okay, here's like, look, this is what I get, like the rough and the tracks, and then I do this, and they're like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And I'm just like, that doesn't, I don't know, which is like it feels defeating sometimes. It really does.
Right,
like it feels
right.
like, wow, does this like matter? I don't know. It's an interesting existential question. But
I mean, I see on your Instagram, you're constantly like, got this mix done, got this mix done. So, I mean, your output is seems significant. Like you get a lot of work, which is great.
yeah,
And you also know how to finish stuff.
yeah. I mean, I'm busy in theory, which is good. 'Cause it's how I pay my bills, which is always comforting.
Also good. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think that's a product of like doing it for a while, and I think that's a key to like some of the success that I have is like that I can move on quickly, which even to me is like jarring to say because I still feel like I take more time than I probably should on like a lot of projects of like, oh no, it was done a week, it was done yesterday, like, or even it was done an hour ago. Like, why am I still tweaking? But yeah, I mean, I think I can definitely attest that to like success of like being able to finish things, I guess, which like is part of mixing, I guess, right? Like, I mean, I think mastering is obviously the like final step or distribution or whatever. But like, yeah, I think there's power in finishing things, and I think creatives struggle with that a lot. I mean, when you and I were just saying, but like,
Yeah.
like finishing things, which is funny because I struggle to start things a lot of times. Like if it wasn't for somebody being like, here's the files, here's the session, like, when can you have it done? Like I might never start it. Like I just, like if it wasn't for bills or whatever.
Right.
And I don't know why, but that's like a weird thing about me of that. Like there's so many ideas I have that I just never start. And I think I just like overcomplicate them in my mind that I'm like, I think about all the things that would need to happen for me to start that, and I'm just like overwhelmed, and then I just never start.
I wonder, I know that for me, when there's something that I would consider to be more of an art
Mhm.
instead of a craft, it's more
Mhm.
difficult for me, and I overbuild it on the art front. But a
Ooh.
craft, I have a set of steps I know how to take and bring it to completion and call it done.
Interesting. Walk me through your idea. Like give me the bullet points of what's an art and what's like
I don't
craft.
know if I have good bullet
Arts and
points for that,
crafts.
but
Well,
I,
but
I,
like what define like what like
yeah,
defines like a craft would be like raking leaves or like
yeah.
I don't
Or I
know.
mean, I think that in some ways, like these tables, right? Like we were
Okay.
talking about, like I made these tables and I love them. I had a design. There's like a
Okay.
proper angle to cut, and there's proper sizes to get them pretty much matched. And
Gotcha.
the art is coming up with a design, and it's pretty simple, but it's also like there's a completion. There's a step, set of steps, and I can over perfect each one of those.
It's black. There's like black and white lines to it. There's
Yeah,
boundaries of like the table is either built or it's not. Is that
yeah,
kind of like yeah.
yeah. Or like if when I'm directing, like I know to go have a very natural conversation. That's kind of the art of it.
Yeah.
But also there's a set of steps that we go through to get down and dial down to what those 2.5 minute films are or whatever.
No, it's just an interesting thought. I mean, the idea of like the art, let's say, being the overwhelming part of it, like the design of the table is maybe what's like, oh, I could design it a million different ways. And like that's maybe the overwhelming part where like the tactile, like doing it is not as overwhelming, which I'd maybe push back and say I still get overwhelmed even with the tactile idea of it because I'm still going with what you're saying of like, well, do it perfect and like what would and like I actually have to like do the thing, you know, like there's like
Yeah.
there's definitely like an element of lalaziness just involved in this too. Like there's definitely
Sure.
a like I'd kind of just rather watch TV rather than build this table. So I mean that's a personal thing, but yeah, I don't know. I think I do think too deep into things sometimes, and like you know we were saying that even with like the video as we're setting this up is like
Yeah.
the way I'm wired and the way I think you're wired as well is like to do things with excellence. So it's like we think too far into that and it's like, well, it's not worth doing if it doesn't have this like stamp of excellence. And I'm trying to get over that, I think,
Right.
because nothing gets done in theory sometimes when you view every task with that. Like right back to like the raking the leaves thing. Like I think there's even chores that I put off doing sometimes because I'm like to do that up to the expectation of what I want it done to, I can't do it. Like I'm not like it's gonna take a lot of effort, you know. And that's why I was even saying earlier, like I'd rather just pay somebody because I know they'll do an excellent job at it. Whereas for me to get into the place of like raking the leaves or painting the house or like whatever that may be, do I think I can do it with excellence? Yes. Do I also know how much energy that's gonna take? Like
Yep.
from me, yes.
Yep.
And that's the point that like I get stuck at this contention a lot of like I know how much that's going to require of me
Yep.
and I don't start normally because of like that hurdle of knowing.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of the fact that I have a fuel tank of executive function that depletes when I use it, and something like mowing the lawn when I have a bunch of other things
Mm.
doing, like it'll take a lot out of me. And so, and then I won't get the other things done that I need to get done. So asking for help has been a big piece for me that has helped me. I mean, just coming to terms with the idea that I am not capable of
Yeah.
putting the love and passion into completing all these things, and other people have
Mm.
more of that than I do, and I want to spend my energy creating video and writing music. And, you know,
How do you get energy back? You use the fuel tank analogy. Like what does it look like for you?
for me,
Yeah.
I mean it's variable in the way that I try to approach it, but recently I'm heavily focused on trying to get sleep a little bit more dialed in because I've had such a variable schedule of
Gotcha.
going to bed at 8 or 9 p.m. or 4:30 a.m.
Gotcha.
Like
Yeah.
I
There's
just
no real schedule
yeah,
in
exactly.
that.
Yeah, exactly. And trying to get 8 hours of actual sleep, not 8 hours in bed. Um,
Mm.
and diet is a big one. Making sure that like I'm a geek when it comes to diet stuff and
Yeah.
have been for a while. And like that stuff helps, but it's not. I think coming to terms with it, it's okay to not be in high performance mode all the time. Like we're humans, and
Give me tips on that one
you
because
know,
that's
there's guilt that we put upon ourselves that comes from not performing well, I
mm,
think, and or being down or having a day where you didn't get as much done or having a day where you're a little bit more distracted. I think people often are like they beat themselves up over it, and it's like, well, now you're spending a bunch of energy beating yourself up over that instead of
oh
realizing that
that's a good
it's
point.
okay because the next day, because of that like that depletion that one day, the next day literally you will have more dopamine to go chase and kick whatever you need to in the butt. Like having
Yeah.
grace with yourself, not judging against the Superman version you have in your head, but the real version of who you are.
Yeah, I mean that's it's always an interesting thing, right? I think something I struggle with too. I mean, all of it. There's like two parts to it. I think of like number one, I think I just need hobbies or something like to spend more time and energy with because if I'm not, let's say, working or being creative, I just kind of like, oh, okay, now what? Like I'm gonna sleep or like, you know what I mean? Like that's not. I
Right.
don't want to sleep. Like I'm not even tired necessarily, right?
Right.
So then I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I'll go for a walk. That was a fun 30-minute walk. Like
Right.
now what? You know, oh maybe I'll even go to the gym. Don't even want to go to the gym, but like I'll go to the, like oh
Right.
there's another hour. Like now what?
Right.
So I always find myself in that, and then I always find myself just being like, I guess I'll just work. Like I want to work anyway, which
Yeah.
like I don't think is unhealthy, but it also is unhealthy because like you need to take a day off. you know, like you need to like take time off. And I think the other thing that I struggle with, but I think is maybe something a lot of people struggle with without realizing is like, I think a lot of the things that we tell ourselves are restful actually are not, like, is the problem. Like, you know, a day for me of rest is probably like scrolling on my phone or like watching a movie or TV or like doom scrolling or like drinking or like any of that. And like the problem with all that is like, I don't think that's restful. Like it's just more dopamine that we're smashing our face with,
Yeah.
which we've all been conditioned to think like, oh, this is rest. Like you had a great restful day.
Right.
And like, and that's the hard part that like you come out of like a couple days of doing that and you don't feel any better. You honestly feel worse.
Right.
So like that's the circle I get in. It's like, okay, I'll take a day off. Great, my days off is like wake up, eat a horrible breakfast, scroll on my phone, watch TV, drink too many beers.
Right.
And then I wake up the next day and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I rested yesterday, but like I don't feel worse. So
Right.
that's a
Right.
hard part, I think. And I don't know the answer to that other than like being aware of it and
Yeah.
trying not to do it. But like that's definitely something I feel when it comes to the like shutting off and resting is like it's usually not rest. That's not rest.
Right. Yeah, I think
That's
that
not
there's
regaining your fuel tank.
yeah, and I think that that's like a general story with workaholics anyway. You know, like if you are using work to solve an anxiety that you have,
Mm.
you know, instead of like being able to sit out in nature quietly and take breaths for 4 hours or you know or like or read
4
a book. Yeah, you know,
hours.
I'm just saying like I mean that but why shouldn't we be able to do that, you know?
Well, it's something
Because
it's
there's
something I think a lot about. Like, just think about times before technology or like
yeah,
electricity. I don't know why I was thinking that the other day. I was like, what did people do like before this? Like, would they just like sit on the porch and not even like listen to anything? They would just sit there. I don't know. This is like weird
these
thought I had in
things
my
made
mind.
of paper called books that you
I
know,
guess, yeah. So like people just read constantly, I guess. I sound like
Play
such
ga-
an
no.
idiot. I sound like I'm so detached from like the reality of what life was like years ago.
This is so funny, but it's true. I mean, because we're constantly fed that content in every way. I mean, it's hard to sit there and not pick your phone up if it's
Oh.
next to you.
Well, because
Um,
it's an addiction. Like it is an addiction, and it's
Yes.
you know we're addicted to dopamine, and like you get that simply from picking it up. Of a
Definitely.
notification from the screen. Like it's
Yep.
we're addicts. We're all addicts.
Yep.
I mean, I can't say for everybody, but
No, I mean, and that's something I've been trying to actively do as well. Is
Yeah.
like wake up early in the morning, go for a run or a walk or whatever, and then like sit and read a real book
yeah.
and just and not have my phone next to me, because that way I can't be contacted, and that's hard, and it takes real intention to do. And so many times I'll be sitting there and thinking, oh, what kind of bird is that? Let me look it up.
Yeah.
Like, or what kind of whatever.
Well,
you
that
know?
modern convenience of even being able to look it up is like
Totally
crazy to think
yeah,
about.
yeah, and it's like I don't need to. I'm fine not knowing what
Yeah.
that is. I just need to sit and be for a little bit, and that's
It's so it takes so much discipline to do that. Like
Yeah.
that like thing that you just explained of like waking up, not
Yeah.
looking at your phone, taking a run, and then just reading a book sounds so simple in theory. And maybe it is for some people, but like it takes so much discipline to do that in my mind. Like to me that is
Yeah.
like one of the hardest things to do. And I don't know why. Like
Yeah.
I'll do good at it for like a week, a month, whatever. And then like you fall out of that discipline of
Yeah.
routine and it's just crazy that we're not inherently wired to want to do that, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I mean, because we like again, you have a drug available
Yeah.
all the time, and that puts you into a spot of knowing that it's available. So you'll, you know, force it not to be in your life for a specific amount of time. But then you can fall back right back into it really easily unless you address it, like you say, just admitting and understanding that it's like it's an addiction and it is a drug, and you know, like the phone is like it's ruining so much about society. I don't mean to be all dramatic about it, but I mean, including this podcast, like we're shooting a podcast that'll probably be watched on a phone, right? and we'll be passively feeding content into somebody's brain that they don't have to
Oh,
actively think about.
there's a catch-22 question. Like, how are we part of the problem then in that sense? Like where's the line of like where is that line as creatives even? I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that today too. I was thinking about like artists promoting themselves on TikTok, and I just was like, man, it's just out of this like weird place. But anyway,
No,
we'll get to
keep
that. But
going.
like,
Yeah.
but but where is that line? Like as a creative or an artist of wanting to put stuff out there, but also being aware of the idea that like it's the problem. I don't know.
Right.
Like you're creating, you're fueling the drug. Like you're the you're going
Totally.
like smoking's bad, kids, but here's cigarettes.
Right.
Like what? I don't know. What do you do with that?
It's almost like if you don't engage with the social media aspect, you're intentionally not going where your community lives because that's where everybody's going. So do
Mm,
you not go to the town square because you disagreed with the location that they built it and you just go hide in a cabin? And is that a good way to engage with this with society? I
mm-hmm.
mean, I don't think so. I think it's like I've struggled a ton with just the
But
concept of exactly that and with social media. It's like, do I want to do it?
yeah, I mean the problem with it though, right? And I don't disagree with you. I mean, I guess it just takes enormous amounts of discipline, but like correct. Like I'm on your side with that. I mean, and even from like let's say like a religious perspective of
Hmm.
like Christianity, like I've grown up in the church my whole life.
Hmm.
I mean that's it, right? Like you're called to be in the world but not of the world, right? So it's like it's what you're saying, like you're still supposed to go into this like space, but how do you not become of it, right? So like how do
Yeah.
you go on social media without becoming an addict to social media? Is like and I just don't is it
Or a
possible, I
drug
guess.
dealer, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
like
mean,
or a drug dealer,
yeah, yeah,
correct. Yeah,
yeah,
like how do
yeah,
you go into the town square with a product? Like with a product, mind you. Like you're
yeah,
not just going there and just like observing. Like you're going there with something
right.
that again, you have to think is not I mean it's a drug, right? I mean
It
it's
is.
but your drug apparently is better than somebody like and then how do you not deal it, right?
Right. And what's that? What's the alternative though? And that's something that I've been again. I've
That's a good
juggled. Is like
question.
I don't. I hate the idea that me going and liking somebody's post gives them a little dopamine hit.
Mm,
I hate the idea that when I comment or I share something, like
mm,
on one end, that I'm giving a dopamine hit to people that's cheap and not,
mm,
but instead of like me just texting and being like, hey, I loved that thing, I thought that was really cool, or calling or showing up, whatever. But it's just cheap and it's fast and it compiles. So I've struggled with that on one end, but then the second part is the idea of, so am I just going to hide, away from everybody and where they spend their
yeah, I
time?
mean
Because that's the
that
alternative
doesn't
is to just not
help
show up,
anything either. Yeah.
which I've done for a decade or whatever. I've just like, I haven't posted on our
Yeah.
Opticopter page forever, and I don't need or want to from a business standpoint. So what's the purpose of doing it?
Mm,
You know?
that's a great I mean that's a great question too because that's something I've thought about in the like idea of doing it for my business or for my like why? Like what is it? Like I want to hero like the artists that I've worked with. I want to showcase what
Yes.
I've done. Like I want to do that. And like what else is there to say though? Or like what benefit does that bring? Or
Yeah.
like what do I want to communicate through all this?
Right.
I don't know. It's an interesting catch 22 of but I mean I love the insight of like the alternate option of not doing anything isn't really the answer either, right?
Right.
Like that's not the
Yeah.
answer.
Well, and
Um,
and what you just said too is like what you share and that I see. It's like you're saying I did this artist song. I mixed it. Here's something that I've done. A lot of it, right? And
yeah.
and that's helping them share their content to their people too, or let me discover
Yeah.
an artist I didn't know existed, or
I mean, I
like
think my situation with it is unique and maybe lucky in the sense that
Yeah.
I've got an easy way out with it, right? Whereas like an artist, musician, whatever, like their end goal might be different in sharing something. I don't know.
So maybe, but I do wonder though, so like just for entertaining the idea, I wonder if the real answer has to do with the fact that you and I are both here in a room talking together, and there's like a communal benefit to helping share ideas that can be fruitful. And like maybe artists will benefit from the idea of more, I mean, not to promote more social media stuff, but like collaborations,
Yeah.
and more so focusing on how they're able to help enable other people instead of like, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Well,
Look at
see,
my
I think
cool
that's
thing,
the problem, and that's where like the motive, and I don't know how to like. It's not my job to like decipher somebody's motive, and
Sure.
it probably only hurts my perspective of somebody if I were to do that. But
Yeah.
but I think that is the problem, and I think that's the heart of a lot of artists is the like look at me mentality, but also from a place of like desperation almost. If they like are
Yeah.
want attention because attention leads to money, I guess, and like they need money because they want to pay their bills, um and that's I don't know, maybe I'm just cynical in it, but I feel like I could smell that. Like I could see that in the stuff that I see people putting out sometimes. And I'm just like, it's kind of cringy in the sense that it's just like this look at me
Yeah.
starvation for attention,
Right.
you know?
But yeah,
And it's not done from a community place, like what you're just saying. Like it's not done
totally.
from a hey, this is fun or I have something valuable or like
Yeah.
not even from a look what I created type of thing.
Right.
Like it's really this is me projecting onto them. I could
Yeah.
be wrong, maybe
Yeah.
they're just not accurately communicating, which I mean comes into like why people like you are important with like putting visuals, I think, to like something and like telling a story because like that's a talent in of itself. And I think maybe that's part of the issue is that everybody has, a camera and a phone now. They think like, oh, I can tell my story very easily when it's like, no, 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 no. Like it can be miscommunicated very quickly and
Yeah.
easily. And I don't know. I think that's something I think a lot about is like communication and like what am I communicating,
Yeah.
and being intentional about it because everything you do communicates something, whether you realize it or not. Like down to the t-shirt you wear, like
Yep.
down to anything and everything. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how social media like changes over time too. Like how
Yeah.
like the place was MySpace and then Facebook and like the climate of it changes and like the medium changes so much too. Like you think back to like a place like MySpace and the way you communicated on it, it was like strictly text based and everything. And now like TikTok and it's like totally different. It goes back to like we were talking about the communication, right? Like
Yeah.
everything communicates something and you just have to be aware of that, I think.
What are some ideas of ways that, you can post something, I can post something, anybody else can post something that like is a healthier post, I guess maybe is a good way to put it. Not like a look at me. Because sometimes, let me say this. With Hoptocopter, the film stuff, the reason I stopped doing it, stopped doing social media, was I looked back at my posts and I was highlighting that I'm flying in a private jet and hanging out of a helicopter. and now
like,
I'm in this, now I'm in this city and now I'm in this big city and check out this big manufacturing facility and check out this cool famous person. And I hated how I felt during that time in life, but I looked like everything was just amazing. And because of the social media side, and I was like, I'm lying and I hate this. So I'm just stopping it all. And that's not healthy because again, I'm not showing up to connect.
You
with
also
people.
didn't express that. Like
I just stopped. I was like, bye. Like, I mean, I didn't do the like.
I'm too good for it. I'm too good to even post this now.
Right. Yeah. But I was like, I just felt, it was a time in life when I was significantly overworking and feeling really frustrated about my reality of the amount of time I spent away from home. But man, it just looked like this glamorous, beautiful excitement, and
and this is something I've wrestled with because like that question, I think the inherent logical answer would be like tips, tricks, educational stuff, right? Like that,
Yeah.
like is baseline for like helpful, right?
Right.
Useful, valuable, like is looking out for your neighbor and taking care of people and like sparks ideas, sparks conversation, right? Like,
Right.
but I have, and this like goes internal now. I have no desire to be an educator. Like I have no desire to be an educator because like the second you start putting out tips and tricks or whatever, what we go to communication now, like what that communicates is that I am an educator and my way, and this goes into like how you would say it, but like this is the way to do something, right? Or like here's a thing, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, personally, I just don't desire to teach, I guess.
Sure. But I think that
Or I don't think it's my place to teach, maybe. Which is again maybe like an anchor holding me back to like doing it.
I
But
think so because your experience and your process is valid because it's the way you do it. It's not like you're trying to tell the world that they should change and do it the way you do it, but
Sure.
just sharing your unique reality to the world is I would say okay to do, and you don't need to feel morally connected to have to do it. But you know,
which I mean I do. I do. I mean, you know, I'm sure you've seen or people watching like will see. Like I mean I have things on the internet of like, hey guys, here's what I did here, you know?
totally.
And there's value in that, and I do it again because it's like begrudgingly like that's what I have to do, and the alternate option is not doing anything, which again I had done for a long time, and I started doing it again because I missed it, which is maybe not healthy, but like I missed posting and I missed making content because I enjoy that in some
Yeah.
crazy place in my brain. Don't know why, but you know, it's a creative endeavor for me to like set up a camera and like do the thing.
Right.
And yeah, I don't love it though. Like I don't love the idea of somebody viewing me as a educator or like what that communicates about like
What do you want to be seen as?
I don't know. That's a great question. What do I want to be seen as? Oh, I like that question. I mean, I think I want to be seen as anything other than an educator. Like honestly, like I think
Sure.
of like the idea of like an entertainer, which like I'm not an entertainer, but I like
Right.
the idea of like um, being known for somebody who's entertaining more than I like the idea of being known for somebody who's like educational. Um, Artful, like I like the idea of being someone who is like creative and artful more than I like the idea of being someone who's an educator.
Yeah.
Thoughtful, you know, like like those are things that I think I'd rather lean towards than being like, oh yeah, he gives like, yeah, I learned so much from him.
Right.
I don't know, which is like dumb. Like who wouldn't want that to be said about them? Like, yeah, I learned so much from them. But people who share educational stuff on the internet usually have like an ulterior motive of like, I want to sell you a course.
Right.
So like they're giving with the intent of taking eventually.
Yeah.
And like, it feels kind of slimy. And I don't ever really plan on taking in
Totally.
that sort of way. Anyway, long rambles. But yes, that's my approach to the idea of like what somebody could do or share, which maybe isn't like a telltale like you can go do this as much as it's maybe like a thought process of like thinking about what it is you're about to post and what that says or communicates to somebody, and if that aligns with what you really do want to be doing on the internet, maybe.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's an interesting.
Which is sort of like the same realization you came to of like, I don't want to be just posting the highlights. Like a better reaction to you instead of maybe like just going away was like maybe you post behind the scenes stuff. Like
Right.
like you're coming from like a place of like documenting where like you're doing a great job at documenting, but you were just documenting the wrong like part of the camera. Like you should have turned the camera this way.
Yeah.
Start documenting like you in those moments. Now you have something very valuable, right?
And I think the vulnerability aspect of it would have been a better way for me to go too. It's like if I posted, hey, everyone in the world, we just had this really difficult agency client that we ended up firing, and we don't have enough money to cover our bills on this next payroll. and this is the reality of running a company. And but we, ethically couldn't be dealing with these people, or, like that kind of stuff, I think is, granted, that could be really poorly received from your client base, but it also would be really refreshingly honest. So it's like, that's an interesting balance too, is like, how honest can and should you be on social media about that stuff, because you're saying vulnerable things to literally everyone. So like it's the people that have a massive depth and philosophical understanding, and people that don't care about you at all, and whatever, or people that they're your competitors and they want to tear you down, or who knows what, right? Like,
I mean, us as humans, I mean, there's tons of studies and whatnot on this, I'm sure, but like we just weren't wired to ever exist in an ecosystem like the internet. We're not, like, it's not meant, we're never meant to have that many interactions. Like, and it's something I think about even as far as like artists go and their mentalities. Like if I were to think back to, like, let's say, think back to Van Gogh or like a big artist from like years ago, and it's like, I can't imagine, like they had to be creating from like a wildly different place than like artists are creating from now, where it's like Van Gogh never imagined that he could like sell something on the internet or get, or like whatever, put it in front of 10 billion people, right? Like he didn't even think that wasn't ever possible, right? Like,
right.
So why would it ever cross his brain? But like we wake up every day as artists being like, knowing the potential of what it could be. It's crazy to think about, right? Like,
right.
Like that just was never a thing before, and now it is, and I can't imagine that doesn't influence every little decision.
Right.
That
and how
people make.
Fatiguing is it?
Fatiguing.
When you think about, I want to show up and just write a pretty song. And actually my music stuff has been this, like for 15, 20 years, I've just been sitting at night playing piano to myself or to the family, and just enjoying the music, and not recording it, not writing stuff, not releasing stuff, just for me. I burnt out. That's a whole other story. But
I don't do it anymore. I got tired of doing it.
right. But coming back into it, it's like I immediately start to filter ideas I have musically through the idea of what it's going to be perceived as on the other side, instead of enjoying that. There's many moments that I'm enjoying it as I'm writing it, but man, as soon as that little thing ticks in, it's like, is this going to be big? Could this have a big hit? Is somebody going to like this? Like,
just go viral.
It tears it down, right? Yeah. It tears down the freshness and the honesty that I think ultimately is what I'm hoping to, perfect the process as a craft.
Okay. A lot of talk about the internet, social media. I feel like we've approached it from maybe a negative place.
Yeah.
What are like wins, do you think? Like what can you look at now from however many years ago, like with a pre-internet era? Like, I mean, I think there's a lot that is good that happened too. No, right? Like, I mean, like the opportunity level of like the cost of entry for like people, like, I don't have exact numbers, but like, let's say there was like 1,000 artists in the year 1980 making a living doing it. Now there's probably exponential, like not even like times, like exponential numbers. Like it's got to be like 1 million people now, versus 1,000 then. So like, I mean, I guess you could counter me and say that's bad maybe, but like I think that's like a win. Like that's a good thing.
I do too, like, absolutely. And I think it also makes it significantly more equitable for people that wouldn't have the money or the proximity to a place like Nashville or something.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I think it's leveled the playing field entirely.
I think that it makes it accessible. You've got free ways to create music, and the quality is not as important as the content, which I know I've said it a bunch of times today. But I think the quality of content matters more. So you can record stuff on your phone, and and get a really cool sound, and also outside of the art side of it, like I have family that I wouldn't know or be as connected to if I wasn't able to. I mean, of course, like the phone is helpful, but to be able to FaceTime or Zoom and like hang out, let's have coffee together, like that's I mean, it's not a replacement for this, but it's
Sure.
pretty freaking close compared to
It's
not
getting
having
there.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about that a lot, like with just the opportunities, and people love to complain about it, like be the negative side of like the cost of entry is too low, or like, I mean, I've complained about that before, but I also at
Yeah.
the same time, I'm like, you people wouldn't even be complaining about this even 10, 20 years ago, like, because
Right.
you wouldn't even be in the industry. Like you'd be, flipping burgers or something,
Yeah.
like, but the opportunity that you even have to be a songwriter and get paid by Spotify,
Yep.
like, it's crazy. Like, 10 years ago, you didn't have that. You were either on radio getting paid or you weren't getting paid at all. Like, so, and not to poke at the songwriters and whatever for the argument they always want more money from Spotify. Like, I get it. Like, and I think there's
Sure.
like things that need to be figured out within the world of internet times and how it gets paid. But it's also just so new that there's not standards and we don't know, and like we're all figuring it out. I think,
Right.
we're all trying to understand what this new landscape looks like. Like it's not established. Like it's not it's brand new
Right.
in the scheme of like time.
Right.
So I think there's a level of patience with it. But yeah, I don't know. As far as like the internet and social media and all of it being a net win or net loss for humanity, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think
Are we
I don't think
in the
it's
green?
easy to say yes or
It's
no
too
on that. I think
nuanced on that
oh
one.
my goodness. But and it's also, there's no undo button for it. So we're here,
So yeah, all we
it's
have
kind
is
of
the fact that we have it. Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly. And
I mean, there's no undo button. You're correct, but I mean, there might be an undo. I mean, like barring something crazy happens, like
yeah.
the plug gets pulled, which is like the scary part to me of like we're so dependent on not even social media, but like technology in that sense at
Mhm.
this point in our lives that it's semi terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I don't know. It's a crazy place. I think it just comes back in general to people being more intentional with it all.
Right.
Is like the like too long didn't read for the whole conversation is like
Yeah.
thinking about it, thinking about what it communicates, thinking about what it's doing for you and your own self-worth.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think also there has to be a shift moving forward. I mean, starting now, but a loud shift towards how to have a healthy relationship with your phone, with social media, with TV, with the content. I mean, that is inevitably tearing down mental health.
The problem is, and I don't disagree with you, and
Yeah.
it's just now after this conversation kind of like sinking in and like the weight and gravity of it, I think in my mind that I'm thinking about it, like I don't disagree with you. And I think there is like a loud conversation happening around it. The problem is it goes back to what I was saying, like we're all addicts, right? Like it's
Right.
not just like, oh yeah, cool, like we'll just stop this thing. Like addiction is a real thing. And like just reading some inspirational blog posts is not gonna fix our addictions. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's not just a quick fix. Like
Right.
we're dealing with a real problem here that like we're all like addicted to our cores. That like people, like if you take their phone away, like have real symptoms of withdrawal,
Right. Right.
and that's a real problem that I don't think is gonna get fixed.
But I guess I'm more hopeful that moving forward there could be we'll call it a connection hygiene that's expected within a social setting. Like for example, right now, you and I have our phones with us, but we could have left them at the front door just to have very intentional present
Sure.
time that is on purpose and not forced or like, but
But is that a cure for addiction?
no, I mean,
That doesn't fix the problem then, I think, right? Like if the problem is that we're addicted to this dopamine constant thing,
right.
how long until I'm just like I'm not coming over?
For sure.
How long
No,
until I'm just like I'm not
100%.
coming here? Because like if it means I have to put my phone in the other room, I really don't want to do that for 2 hours. I'd rather stay home because that's more gratifying for me to scroll my phone.
For
at home.
sure.
You know what I'm
No,
saying? Like that's
I agree.
because unless you fix the like addiction at its core,
Right.
it'll continue to eat people alive. Which I mean, we already see that. I think like
I agree.
people don't want to leave their houses. Like just going out to a social thing is becoming more and more hard for people and rare. I think to some
Right.
extent. Yeah.
But I also think that you have this pervasive addiction that exists when you're in a social setting all the time, that is muting the experience of being able to just hang out with people. Like having the phone constantly ready to potentially buzz at you instead of being able to be truly and intentionally present for short periods of time. Like it takes away from the potency of actually socializing anyway.
Yeah, but the problem is this doesn't give dopamine, right? The
Yeah.
phone does. So you're always going to crave that over this, right? Like, yes, this is in 2 hours from now, we're going to look back and be like, wow, that was like really fulfilling and I
Yeah.
feel great because I
Right.
did it. But in the moment, me scrolling on TikTok sounds a lot better than this
Right.
conversation. You
Oh,
get what I'm
thanks,
saying?
bro.
Like, no,
No,
but you know what I mean,
no,
right?
totally,
Like
totally.
pleasure
Yep.
wise, it's that, and that's the
Yep.
problem. Is like this isn't a replacement for dopamine, and
No.
like, I mean, I'm not an addiction specialist or anything by any means, but like replacing an addiction with another addiction isn't like the solution either.
Right.
But without sending everybody to rehab, like how do you go what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
I don't it's and maybe I'm getting just dark
No,
now,
but
but
I guess my point is that I think that the signs of mental health declining because of specifically that perpetual connection is it has to trigger something in schools and practice that might take 20 or 30 years to flip, but like we can't just perpetually head down the path we're going, I don't think, because like you say, it's everybody's an addict and just goes away, whatever that means. But
why can't we? Why can't we just fall to the bottom of the pit? I think we can. It's dark, but I think we
sure.
can. Like I think we can because I think there's people who profit more. This is just some conspiracy theorist
Yeah,
nonsense
sure,
now.
sure.
But like I mean I think there's
Yeah.
people who profit from us being addicted to our phones and
Oh,
being
big
addicted to
time.
like and there's no incentive for us to not be.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I'm in this with everybody too. Like,
Of course.
like this
Of
sounds like
course.
I'm some like evil overlord, but
Of course.
like I'm stuck in it too in the pit of the
Right.
thing, right? Because I mean, it goes back to where we went of like it's a necessary evil,
Right.
right? Like it's a
Yeah.
necessary evil to exist in 2023.
But it also like, yeah, I mean, I think we are perpetually heading further away from our connection to reality out here.
Absolutely.
Um,
Well, AI, I mean,
but
the
also
glasses
like,
just got to, like,
but the potency of what that is out there, um, for me is so much stronger because of like when I leave my phone and I intentionally
yeah,
meditate and or connect with nature, it's so much louder
yeah,
than it was before to me because as a kid it just was nature and I ran around and it was fun and I did the things. But now it's like, wow, it is really cool. Like nature's
yeah.
No, that sounds
I don't disagree with you. Yeah,
but that takes work and that takes discipline and it
sure.
takes heavy
Which again
focus.
is different than getting a quick high.
Right.
But no, I mean that's all great points, and I think the interesting thing that I'm thinking about too is like, I mean I'm younger than you, I believe and assume, but like people even younger than me, let's say, right?
Mhm.
Like who have never like I mean I remember a time when I didn't have a phone,
Yeah.
like growing up as a teenager really. I forget how old I was when I got a phone, but like they weren't a thing that like a lot of people had. Like I kind of even remember my parents getting a cell phone for the first time. Like
Right.
it was on the incline of like coming up in technology where for a long time I didn't grow up, I didn't grow up on iPads and everything. Whereas like now I see my friends with kids, like they're glued to the like they only know that,
Right.
So I think maybe that'll play more into like what you're saying, where like kids are going to discover the nature thing when they turn, my age, 20 something, and go like, wait, I've been on this iPad, but like
Uh-huh.
this outside thing's pretty cool. If we don't kill the outside thing in the meantime by fueling this thing in front of us,
Right.
which is even bigger existential, but
No, it's interesting, and I think it does come down to the parents, which there's tons of, parent guilt, and there's tons of,
Sure.
um, it's easy to feel guilty that your kids are on iPad, but realizing that, we moved to Tennessee from Colorado, and that's their way of socially connecting with their friends back in Colorado often, and,
Yeah.
so we have some rules about the amount of light that they need to get. Like you need to be in the sun for a minimum of 2 hours a day.
So they're in the sun on their iPad.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, that started. They tried that. But
He said they tried that.
like this is not what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I mean, I don't know. There's no answers to any of this. I mean, it's
Sure.
just like open-ended thoughts, and I think these conversations are important to have because,
Yes.
again, it's just like the awareness. Like I think that's where it all starts, right? Like the awareness that you're addicted is like step one of the addiction process, is not of like a recovery,
Right. And also realizing that
Or
when
admitting
you,
it, but
I mean, you said earlier, I can go do that thing. I'll go run for like a week or for a month
Yeah.
and then I stop. Instead of looking at the stopping as the bad thing, look at the times that you did do it as the win, or the time that you do spend an hour without your phone very intentionally as the win, not the fact that you doom scrolled as the fact like you suck. You know what I mean? Like being able to kind of shift the focus
Yeah.
to be more emphasized on the moments where you are able to be better.
Yeah, I mean, and you're not wrong with any of that. I mean, it's just, I mean, my point in all that was like it takes so much discipline to get out of the thing, which, like, to your point, is the key to the actual happiness, right? That, like, I think everybody's missing and craving, and they think like more, like bigger numbers, more likes is it, because it does feel pretty good, right? Like, but it's not the lasting thing, right? I mean, I've seen that happen to so many artists here in town, I've worked with and not worked with, of just like they get the big hit, they get the big hit, they get the big money, and it might even stay for a long time, but they're miserable, or it falls apart and then they're miserable, and now they're chasing this thing, and now they're double miserable because they had the thing and it collapsed, and now they're after the thing, and now they're creating from a place of just like you're never going to get there again, because the thing you created originally was the honest, true art that got you there, that resonated, and now it gets messy.
Right.
It gets messy quick.
Right. So what's the solution to life?
I mean, I think we discovered that in this. Turn your phone off. Get into nature.
Good in nature.
There you go. Throw your phone
We
outside.
solved all the problems.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, thanks for helping me solve the world problems.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Hope this goes viral.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing with other people you think might gain value from it. My name is Seth Schaefer. This is Behind the Act.